Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 333, cover dated June 1996. The cover is by Lee Weeks, inked by Tim Townsend, and it features very centrally Gambit and Jean Grey up against a number of unidentified soldiers. And what I like about this cover is the trope that Lee Weeks is pulling on here, which is you have your heroes more or less in the center, surrounded by foes and surrounded in particular by, in this case, gun barrels and gun muzzles. And you can do it with swords or knives, or you can do it with claws. So it's a classic design trope for a superhero cover, and I like the way that Lee Weeks has used it here on this particular one. So let's open this one up to the first page, and the story begins in Arlington, Virginia. And this particular issue of Uncanny X-Men is another one of these preludes to Onslaught, the Onslaught event that crossed the Marvel universe of titles, but in particular issued from the X-Men, the core X-Men titles. And in Arlington, Virginia, we're looking at the residence of Senator Robert Kelly, a long-time supporting character in the X-Men mythos. And he is looking out his window with suspicion, and somebody's arrived into his house and he's reaching for his gun there. Who's there? He asks. Step out of the darkness now, or so help me. We turn the page and we get a double page half spread here with a huge close-up on Senator Kelly gripping his gun there and pointing it at Cyclops in the shadows. So the title of the story is The Other Shoe dropping, and the creative team, Scott Lobdell writer, Pascual Ferry on guest pencils, and he just guest penciled issue 51 of Adjectiveless X-Men, the Spanish artist, very new to Marvel at this point, but now in 2024 a long time artist in the comics industry, inked by Tim Townsend. There's a host of inkers there. Tim Townsend, I forget the first name of the Hunter person, Mike Morales, and Dave Hunt. And we have Team Buccellato on colors and digital enhancement. So there are a number of digital effects used in this issue. I'll point them out as we get to them. And Richard Starkings and Comic Craft on digital lettering. Now, throughout this issue, there are a number of narrative captions, third-person narrative captions. And basically, they are catch-ups on who the characters are in Scott Lobdell's script, so we're going to skip those. But something I want to point out in the background here are these books, so you'd have to pick this out in high definition if you're watching this video review back in high definition. But we've got little titles on the spines of the books here in the background, and my guess is that these are written in by Tim Townsend. So upside down we've got Comics Are Good, we've got Read Comics there in the middle, and we've got Marvel there on the spine of that book. Over here we have Planning the Perfect Wedding by Margaret Madureira. So I was wondering who that is. Is that Joe Madureira's sister, or is it his mother, or something like that? And up here by Sergeant A. Travis, Hasta la Vista, Uncle Sam. And then this one here, Teaching the 90s. So interesting little messages there from Tim Townsend in the inks on the spines of those books. Cyclops responds to Senator Kelly. You sent word that you wanted to meet with me, Senator Kelly. I assume it wasn't to kill me, so put the gun down and we'll talk. So he does. And what I like here in terms of Pascual Ferry's drawing is obviously the lights are off here in Kelly's study or office. And I like the casting of shadows on the wall, and also the tree branches here as well. So that's nicely done. And he continues that design element in these three panels across the bottom of the page too. And I like his design choice over here where he has Kelly in shadow and Cyclops open for color, just with the details of his ruby quartz visor there and his X logo emblem as well on his chest showing, and everything else left open for color. Interesting little choices. So Kelly asks, who was it that got word to him? Cyclops isn't going to answer that. He wants Kelly to get to the point. What do you want? And Kelly, with his head bowed, says he needs help. How bad is it? Asks Cyclops, because these aren't exactly friends. And Kelly's response is bad. So that's our opening. And then the scene switches to several miles away. And we have a trio of X-Men in the Blackbird, and they're hovering above the Pentagon. We've got Storm, we've got Cannonball, the newest X-Man of the period, and also Bishop. And it's interesting here, Cannonball, the way that Lobdell is characterizing him as the newest X-Men is he's kind of like a neophyte. Again, he's all wondering and asking questions, which doesn't really fit with the characterization that he had in Fabian Nicieza's X-Force. But in any case, he asks the question of Storm. I don't mean to sound all doubtful or nothing, he asks, but ain't this up Cable's alley more than the X-Men's? And Storm here, I like this. She says, you find hovering directly over Pentagon airspace reminiscent of your days with the more aggressive X-Force? I take that as a compliment. For Cable, despite his gruff exterior, is a man who knows how to achieve his goal quickly and efficiently. I find that admirable. And that really chimes with the Storm of the Outback era. So I wonder, is that Lobdell remembering that? But whether he's remembering it or not, it works well for anyone who was a long-time reader of the X-Men comics and remembers how Storm was during that period of the X-Men. So here we see one of those digital effects. The Blackbird is cloaked by Shi'ar cloaking technology, hovering there above the Pentagon. And the X-Men have infiltrated the Pentagon. We've got Gambit and Jean Grey who have made their way into the lower levels of the Pentagon. And here, I think that this is also aboard the Blackbird. We've got Iceman, more digital coloring effects, rendering his icy exterior. We've got Beast there as well, but in this period of continuity, Beast has been replaced. The genuine Beast, the genuine McCoy, to use that expression again, has been replaced by Dark Beast from the Age of Apocalypse. We've got Professor X, and we've got feral, bestial Wolverine since the events of issue 100 of his particular title. So what is going on, as I mentioned just a minute earlier, is that Major Remy LeBeau and Colonel Jean Grey have entered the lion's mouth and gone into the sub-basement levels of the Pentagon. And what's interesting here visually is that Jean is using her telepathic power to mask the true appearance of Gambit's eyes. So we see what Gambit would look like if he weren't a mutant in this particular drawing of him, and that's intriguing. And they are infiltrating, most particularly Operation Zero Tolerance. So another digital lettering effect here that looks pretty nice on the page, and they are making their way in. But what does this remind me of? It reminds me of issue 157 of Uncanny X-Men, when the X-Men infiltrated the Pentagon. And who infiltrated at that time? It was Colonel Carol Danvers and Major Logan. So if you look back at my review of that particular issue, you'll see a few little reflections or echoes of it in this one here. And I wonder, was Lobdell aware of that when writing this particular issue, or is it coincidence? So let's continue with the story here. There's a scene switch to Colorado and Warren Worthington's Rocky Mountain Erie. And this is all in the aftermath of both he and Psylocke's injuries sustained in battle with Sabretooth. So they're on a leave of absence for recuperation. But in issues 329 and 330, Warren and Wolverine went on a quest to New York to secure the Crimson Dawn, heart of the city, which they used to bring Psylocke back from the dead, or the almost dead, but it's changed her. And so we see the visual representation of that change with this strange tattoo looking design that is crossing over her left eye. And what that portends or what it means, we don't know just yet. But in this particular scenario, they're having a little training session, and Warren's thinking to himself, that's it, Warren, keep pushing yourself, concentrate on helping Betsy recover from her wounds, ignore the damage done to your own wings, just ignore the problem, and maybe it will just go away. So Psylocke, of course, using her ninja skills to sneak up behind him, and he's impressed. That was great, Bets, he says. It looks like your exposure to the Crimson Dawn has left you sharper than you were before Sabretooth wounded you. So it seems, she responds. Would you care to try this again from the top, he asks. If you're up to it, she says. And then she thinks, and this is intriguing, oh, Warren, you've tried so hard to care for me during my convalescence. She pauses, should tell you everything. And then I like this in a separate thought balloon, I suppose, and then back here. But the changes taking place in my body, in my perceptions are fascinating. I don't know that I want to share them. So Psylocke getting a power upgrade here with her encounter with the Crimson Dawn. She thinks here yet. And then we see most of her face in shadow here. And there's a shadow behind her. Sorry, Warren, you'll have to do better than that. So is this the training exercise continuing? No, it is not. And this is an intriguing little mystery. So there's some strange being makes a telepathic, a psionic appearance, asking for help. Without uttering a spoken word, Psylocke's psionic screams cut through the air, taking their toll on the fragile, healing psyche of Elizabeth Braddock. So she drops to the ground, calling out for Warren telepathically. He comes racing in, but the strain of racing towards her takes its toll on him, and the two of them are rendered unconscious on the ground. So who or what is this? And of course we have another digital coloring effect used there to render this strange appearance of this disguised character, whoever it may be. Then we switch back to the Pentagon, and Remy and Jean have made their way to an even deeper level of the Pentagon, and they are witness now to a briefing by this figure, Bastion, who made his first appearance in Shadows in Adjectiveless X-Men number 52. And he addresses the group of military and civilians by saying, my name is Bastion, as most of you already know. I've come to set us free. And he's got an interesting physical design. Just the way that he appears on this page, he reminds me of Nimrod from the Claremont, Romita and Silvestri run on the title. So an interesting visual reflection there of Nimrod's design, though he is not Nimrod. At least that isn't the idea with his first appearance. And here we have Remy thinking, great, wonderful, just what we need, another self-appointed savior of humanity. But Jean tells him to be quiet, that there's something wrong, something different. So Bastion continues with his pitch. In the past, your various governments have spent countless billions of dollars on studying, containing, or even exterminating mutants. Until now, you've wisely chosen to consolidate your formidable resources under a single multinational human survival task force, and that's what Operation Zero Tolerance is. And Jean's got something interesting to say about all of this. Bastion's mind is closed to her, but she says to Remy psionically, I usually feel the mental resistance, but with Bastion, it's as if he doesn't even exist, like he's some psionic blank slate. So that's yet another mystery. And then Bastion continues, while there are many problems currently facing Homo sapiens in our dealings with the so-called Homo superior, everything from self-professed evil mutants to the lingering and intangible threat of the legacy virus, which stands to decimate both the mutant and human populace, the most disturbing dilemma may be the sudden and seemingly random proliferation of incidents involving something called Onslaught. So here we are getting more of this run-up prelude to the arrival of Onslaught and the reveal of who Onslaught is. Bastion continues, despite our united intelligence data, we don't know if we're dealing with a single individual or an organization. It is clear that this is a destructive, malevolent force that is making its presence felt all over the planet. So we have these little points indicating things to do with Onslaught all over the planet. And Remy's thinking, how could Onslaught be doing all this and the professor know nothing about it? And that is a striking question, and one that is ironic in respect of the ultimate reveal of the identity of Onslaught. And then we go back to the residence of Senator Kelly, and his residence is being monitored from outside. And someone is saying that he's about to sing, he's about to reveal things that are not supposed to be revealed. And Senator Kelly says to Cyclops, when I first got involved with Project Wide Awake, and that is a call back all the way to issue 142 of Uncanny X-Men, Kelly continues, I did so in order to serve the best interests of everyone, humans and mutants. You've seen the headline, Cyclops. No more than that, you've lived most of them. Humans killing mutants, mutants killing humans, people killing people. The Mutant Registration Act, the Sentinels, Project Wide Awake, these were all just tools designed to stop this madness. I assure you the goal was never to destroy one race over the other, but desperate times demanded desperate measures. But outside in the silhouetted van, a decision has been made that Senator Kelly has to be shut up before he says any more. Turn the page, and Cyclops says to Kelly, most mutants don't want to destroy the world or even to rule it. Basically, they just want to be left alone to live their lives. But Kelly here, under stress, says, unfortunately, it may be too late for that. There's a movement out there, Cyclops, a group with an international agenda. I only recently became aware of it during an investigation involving the disappearance of several dozen technicians working at a Sentinel research facility. But Cyclops interrupts him, because Cyclops, ever on the alert for any threats, knows that there are security guards on the ground. He can hear movement, and so he moves and pushes the senator out of the way of a blast of some description. The room explodes as Cyclops instinctively protects his long-time adversary, because of course Cyclops is a hero. And moments later, somebody calls in, mission accomplished, sir, to Graydon Creed, presidential candidate Graydon Creed, who seems to be there in his office getting the news. For the moment, the senator won't be telling any more tales out of school. But of course, he's not dead at all. And then the scene switches back to the Blackbird cloaked, hovering over the Pentagon. And this is an interesting little exchange too, where Storm asks the professor, is about to ask him something, but the professor tells her, silence, I'm concentrating. And she responds, but earlier you stated you were unable to do so. Trying to mentally eavesdrop on the presentation below. Sorry, I've read that out of order. So it's actually the placement of the speech balloons that's thrown me off there. So he says to her, silence, Aurora, I'm concentrating, trying to mentally eavesdrop on the presentation below. And she says to him, but earlier you stated you were unable to do so. And what does he say to that? He says, I was wrong. Now cease these distractions. Pause, please. So that is going to also, if you were to read it back after the reveal of who Onslaught is, that will make sense. So, but below, Bastion is continuing his presentation, talking about the technicians at the Sentinel research plant, how they were found, one of them was found with no memory of the 6 months she'd spent working on the project. This is the extent of the threat we're up against, people, he says as he pulls a gun from his jacket. This Onslaught seems intent on consuming us all. We're up against a mutant or mutants who can turn minds on and off, erase entire lives on a whim. That is why we are ending it all tonight, now, as he draws his gun on Jean and Remy. And Remy, with understatement, says, this don't look so good. But think about it. We're up against a mutant or mutants who can turn minds on and off, erase entire lives on a whim. And in retrospect, who was it that did that in a significant issue of Adjectiveless X-Men, issue number 25? Well, if you're a long-time reader, you'll know the answer to that particular question. So Jean here strikes out with her telekinesis, but she discovers it's as if my mutant ability doesn't work on him, but that's impossible. So Gambit saves her, pushes her out of the path of the bullets, and now they're surrounded by these soldiers. So basically this is our cover image, except that they're in costume on the cover, artistic license. But now they begin their escape from the Pentagon with this door slamming down behind them, or in front of them rather, and Gambit using his not telekinetically, but his kinetically charged playing cards in order to blast their way free. Let's continue with the story, get past the advertisements. We've only 2 pages left. So they're outside and they find a whole group of soldiers unconscious. And who makes an appearance except for this mysterious figure from the from issue, what was it again? The end of X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men number 50. And this psionic projection says to Jean Grey, "Your allies cannot see me, Jean." And she responds, "It was you. You made all these soldiers pass out. You helped us escape." "Yes," the entity says. "Why?" And it responds, "Consider it, pause, a gift." So we're going to get much more on this entity and Jean Grey's encounter with it in Adjectiveless X-Men number 53. So stay tuned for an upcoming review on that particular issue. And here in the background we see Cyclops, sorry, that's not Cyclops, Cannonball and Storm there to collect Gambit on the ground and obviously fly him up to the waiting Blackbird. Something I want to point out just at this point is how short Jean Grey's skirt is for someone who's supposed to be a colonel in the US military. Really ridiculous. A little bit more artistic license on the part of a very young Pascual Ferry. But in any case, let's continue. Last page. So the scene switches back to Colorado and Psylocke's come to, as has Archangel. And basically Archangel says to her, "Guess I'm more seriously wounded than I thought." And her response is, "Let's hope not, for both our sakes, because whatever that thing is, the form trapped within a living shadow, when it finally breaks out, something tells me it's not going to be friendly." And he says, "I don't disagree." And looming over them is this figure that is extremely reminiscent of Juggernaut. But I think it's supposed to be simply symbolic rather than that he's actually present. And then we have a rather large next issue, or like what's coming up next after this particular story. Don't miss X-Men 53 for more on the mystery of Onslaught. Basically, we get to see Onslaught for the first time in that particular issue drawn by Andy Kubert. The threat that may very well mean the end of the Marvel Universe as we know it. So that is, a big signpost for the run-up to Heroes Reborn. And then check out X-Force 55 and find out what happens to Cyclops. So you really got to pick up a lot of different X titles to be fully on board with all the ins and outs and steps of the Onslaught event. So we've got 2 pages of letters here, all focused on issue 330. And again, more promotion for the next issue. There's a Juggernaut loose on the grounds of the Xavier Institute. Maybe it's time for a new gardener. Very funny. And over here we've got the X-Facts editorial. There's just one thing I want to point out here. We get to see Pascual Ferry's design for Bastion, but this is the funny thing here. It's an advertisement for X-Men Unlimited number 11 featuring Magneto and Rogue. And the bit here is, you all remember the attraction these two felt for one another way back in the now classic Uncanny X-Men numbers 272 to 274. Well, that's a mistake, number one, but that's not the funny thing. It was 274 to 275. Well, now they're getting the chance to do something about it. There's just something about that that's hilarious, the phrasing to me. And this is also worth pointing out. So the very last issues of Fantastic Four before the Heroes Reborn reboot, they were written by Tom DeFalco, but drawn by Carlos Pacheco, or Pacheco rather, that's how his name is pronounced. and excellent. Another Spanish artist. I have those. I picked those up at the time. Really, really good stuff. And it looks good here in this little oval advertising it. So there you go. And we do get a first glimpse here of Onslaught. These are Andy Kubert pencils, uninked. That's really, really intriguing stuff. And of course, looking at the design for Onslaught, very reminiscent of Magneto, yes. And of course, that will prove to be significant when we get all the information about who exactly is Onslaught and the origins of Onslaught. And so this is advertising the Onslaught event, and it's going through so many Marvel Comics titles, including Ghost Rider and Daredevil there. It's all over the Marvel Universe, a huge event for 1996. Well, I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 333. Let me know your thoughts on the issue in the comments section to this video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do, and stay tuned for more content like this.